You've heard all about us and all of our upcoming talks. Our first speaker tonight is Sophie Spencer of CPRE Avon and Bristol. So Sophie, if you want to bring up your slides now.
Is that working?
I think so. Yes, perfect.
Great.
Off you go.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining in to hear more about light pollution. As Dorian said, my name's Sophie Spencer. I'm the director of CPRE's local group in Bristol and the Bath area, CPRE Avon and Bristol, and I also live locally in Bristol in Bishopston, so I'm very appropriate for tonight. So what I'm going to cover in this presentation is a little bit about what light pollution is, why it's a problem, what CPRE has been doing to highlight and tackle this issue over the years, and also what can be done to reduce light pollution and its impact on our health and on wildlife. So CPRE, we're a charity, the Countryside Charity. We're established in 1926 to ensure that everyone could access and enjoy the countryside. And we've been a leading voice one of the leading voices in championing dark skies for many years. And I think the countryside has never been more important to us as a nation during this coronavirus. Many of us have connected more closely than ever to our nearby countryside. So we think that dark skies, star-strewn skies are one of the things that make the countryside so special. And so we work at a local and a national level to make sure that we can all experience that and that we can try and reduce our light pollution levels to sort of create and protect the areas that have dark skies. So here we are. Why do we care about light pollution? Well, as I just said, starry skies are a really magical sight. They're one of the most magical sights the countryside can offer, and seeing a sky filled with stars can be really one of those moments in life that we feel awe, that can inspire us to respond to all the challenges that are thrown at us in life, and it can really benefit our mental and our physical health. And it's for a good reason that the countryside is often called the natural health service. Even when we might live in a city like I do, we really need contact with nature. And it's been estimated that I think 2 million households experience lockdown without a garden. And I just heard the other day that something like 500,000 additional people in the UK will require mental health support in the next 2 years, directly as a result of this pandemic. And so we really need to be able to access nature on our doorstep to be able to benefit from what it can bring to us. And starry skies are there, they're above us all the time, but light pollution is so often stopping us from experiencing such a natural wonder. And not only that, of course, it's disrupting wildlife's natural patterns and it's contributing to carbon emissions. So when we talk about light pollution, what do we mean? So really there's three main types. So there's the sky glow. So that would be the sort of orange glare. When you're out in the countryside, you'll have seen it by looking back at a city or a town, that kind of orange glow that spreads deep into the countryside, and it's caused by the scattering of artificial light on airborne dust and water droplets. The second one is, you can see in this photo, that's glare. So that's sort of uncomfortable brightness where light is shining into our eyes rather than where we want to illuminate, like on the ground. And then finally, light intrusion, which is where light is spilling beyond the boundary of a property, so into somebody else's space, maybe in through your windows, through your curtains, and disturbing you. And so what is the impact of light pollution on birds? Well, light pollution basically lures birds into urban areas during their autumn migration. It interrupts their natural rhythms, including migration, but reproduction and feeding patterns, and it can cause confusion, and that often has fatal outcomes for birds. And it also simulates shorter nights, and that's known to induce early breeding in some bird species. And also the impact is pretty catastrophic. So there's been a lot of research on this. BugLife did a report a number of years ago, but also more recently, there was a scientific review reported in The Guardian, which you can read and Google online, but it concluded that light pollution was a key driver of insect declines, and they called it an insect apocalypse. Insects around the world are rapidly declining, and their absence will have devastating consequences on life on this planet. And lighting basically affects insects in pretty much every imaginable part of their lives. And moths, for example, have declined by 40%, and they have an important role in pollinating flowers during their nocturnal activity. But the good news is that this impact can, of course, be alleviated if we use lower energy lighting or part-time night lighting. And so not only on wildlife, but light pollution impacts on people. So studies suggest that exposure to light at night can disrupt our production of melatonin, a brain hormone that's best known for its daily role in resetting the body's biological clock. Melatonin is produced when the body experiences darkness, so of course artificial light is going to affect that. And suppression of melatonin has been linked to all sorts of health conditions, including to breast cancer and other chronic health conditions. And finally, climate change. At CPRE, of course, we're passionate about addressing the climate emergency, and limiting artificial light where possible is a great way to save both energy and money. Excess and unnecessary light at night is adding to our carbon emissions, and if we can reduce it, we can at the same time help the climate emergency. And we estimate that street lights account for as much as 30% of a council's carbon emissions, and reducing that can also offer a massive potential saving. So obviously it needs to be done safely if we want to reduce our light, but it is possible, and after consultation with local communities it can easily be done, and it is happening in some areas, and I'll sort of touch on that a little bit later. So what about CPRE? So we have got three main areas where we're campaigning on light pollution. So first of all, we have our night blight mapping, and the report is there. You can download it for free from our website, and that's about revealing the extent of the problem through light pollution mapping. And we have a special website which is just there on the bottom of the slide, where all the information is. And secondly, every year we've held a star count, so that's engaging the public and raising awareness of the problem and encouraging families to get outside and to look at the stars. And finally, we work on influencing policy locally and nationally to try and tackle this problem, and I'll talk about that again. We've done a report called Shedding Light, which looks at how local councils are tackling policy, light pollution policy. So the mapping, so where are the areas of greatest light pollution, and where can we still experience dark skies? So this is Bristol. So this is was done in September 2015. We used American weather satellite data to produce online searchable maps that cover the whole of England. You can put in your postcode, your local authority, or if you live in a national park or you want to visit an area of outstanding natural beauty, you can look on the website and you can see immediately what kind of level of light pollution that area experiences. So obviously, if you can see Bristol, we've got the centre of Bristol there, that kind of dark kind of aubergine colour is the highest level of light pollution, and also you can see it in Avonmouth and a little bit in South Gloucestershire, and that sort of reduces slightly, and we've got the sort of pinky reddy. But what's interesting is even in Lee Woods, where you can see the yellow, that's still pretty high levels of light pollution, and we need to get right beyond Bath to really get out into some more darker skies. So we're looking at whether we can get more funding to redo these maps, perhaps locally, but maybe even at an even more detailed level, because they're really helpful in when community groups or even individuals want to identify particularly bright spots which may be having a disproportionate effect on local light pollution levels. So they have then got the option to work with whoever is causing that light pollution. They're probably completely unaware of that, and work towards reducing it and benefiting the wider area. And this is already happening locally. We've worked with a local Bath group called the Starlit Skies Alliance, and we've been talking to Bath University, for example, about how they might reduce their light pollution levels, which are really quite high. So in the map, again, there's 9 different levels of brightness, and this is actually pretty shocking. And in overall, I think 22% of England has pristine night sky, so that's free of light pollution. But as you can see, most of Bristol suffers light pollution at some level, and around half of Bristol suffers the higher levels of light pollution. And we rank 225 out of 326 districts in England, so we're not the worst, but not the best. And that's just a little sort of close up of some of the areas. So it just shows how kind of detailed you can get at the moment. So do check it out on our website and you know, try out the interactive map. So on to the annual CPRE star count. So we've been doing this for many years, and we've been doing it in partnership with Bob and the British Astronomical Association's Commission for Dark Skies. This also helps us track how much light is being wasted and shining up into the night sky. So, for example, this year in February 2020, we had 2,500 people took part in a national star count. So they are counting the visible stars they can see within the Orion constellation. And I think 27,000 stars were counted over the course of 1 week. And this really helps us monitor how much light is leaking out of developments into the night and obscuring starry skies. So what do you think? Did 2020 bring darker skies, or has light pollution worsened? Well, there's good news and bad. So the bad news was that 61% of people are in an area with severe light pollution. So that has increased from 57% of people last year. So that suggests more people are suffering severe light pollution, and that means they can count fewer than 10 stars within the Orion constellation. And if you look at that map, basically those kind of red and purpley spots are all the people who can only count less than 10 stars. The good news is, at the other end of the spectrum, we saw a rise in the number of people who were reporting that they could count more than 30 stars within Orion. So this year that was 3% of people, and that was up 1% from last year when only 2% of people could see more than 30 stars. So those are the lucky people who are benefiting from more truly dark skies, and they're getting a great sort of stargazing experience. So we're pleased that there's a small increase in that number of people, but obviously we'd like to have many more of us to have that experience. And as I said earlier, you know, marveling at a starry sky can be a really moving experience, and it can really inspire us and help us lift our spirits, especially when many of us are having to stay at home right now. And of course, it's especially important for children to experience these sort of wonders. So this is Bristol. These were the star counts that took place in Bristol. So as you can see, the red and the purple, so most of the star counts in Bristol revealed severe light pollution. No more than 10 stars could be seen, and yeah, that kind of gets slightly better as you get further out, but nothing particularly spectacular. But you know, it's free for anyone to have a go. We'll be doing it again in next February, so go onto our website, give it a try, and all the maps are again free to look at. You can put in your area and have a look. But also on our website, if you are keen on looking at the stars, then there are more ideas. There's stargazing tips, and there are places to find sort of dark skies on the website. So we also asked people as part of the star count to do a survey, and we asked the question, do you think every child should be able to experience the wonder of a star-filled night sky? And of course, a huge 96% of people told us that they did. So that was great. So what's next? So what we focus on is what local councils can do about light pollution. So councils do have powers that can help give people a better view of the night sky. And again, in our survey, 82% of people said they'd like their council to do more about light pollution. And there are straightforward steps that councils can take in consultation with local people. They don't just reduce light, but they save energy, they save money, they're benefiting our health, they're benefiting biodiversity. And a lot of our campaigning in partnership with others has helped improve the policies that exist to give more scope for protecting against light pollution. So in 2005, we got the Clean Neighbourhoods and Environment Act, where light pollution became a statutory nuisance in the same way as noise pollution is. So that was a start. And then more recently in the National Planning Policy Framework, so that's the main planning policy that influences all of the local plans, we now have a policy which limits the impact of light pollution from artificial light on local amenity, intrinsically dark skies, and on nature conservation. So it's not perfect, but it is quite a good start. But we don't really see any improvements in light pollution. And when we did a survey, so again, you can download this report on our website, it's called Shedding Light, and we did a huge survey of local authorities, and we found that actually only 6 of the 49 local authorities who have a lighting policy at all said they had introduced it due to the national planning policy. So yeah, I mean, the national planning policy doesn't really seem to be making an impact yet. But local authorities can, of course, potentially save hundreds of thousands of pounds by switching off the street lighting. So we're looking to see how we can get local authorities to take more of an interest in this, and some of them are. So the survey looked at what is the main causes of light pollution. So road lighting is the main one, as well as domestic security lights. But then old street lights, the orange glow, are pretty high as well. And that it is causing a lot of problems for people. So one of the things we were looking at was whether councils would be prepared to introduce streetlight dimming schemes, and that was good news. So almost half of the councils who responded to the survey, so obviously not all of them, but they said they were engaged in a dimming scheme, and that a lot of people hadn't even noticed, a lot of communities hadn't even noticed that. So it wasn't disadvantaging people in terms of their feelings of safety, but the benefits were energy saving, cost saving, and of course reducing light pollution. And a few examples: North Somerset Council estimate that £300,000 a year will be saved following completion of their dimming and part night lighting scheme. And Shropshire County Council hope to save 600 tonnes of CO2 a year. Essex County Council expects to reduce their carbon emissions by 8,000 tonnes due to a part night lighting scheme. And Leicestershire County Council are aiming to reduce carbon emissions by 30% by dimming and part night lighting. So we can see some interesting figures, and it's just trying to work out why more councils are not doing this yet. So we're talking to Bristol City Council. What is Bristol doing? So Bristol are working on a sort of rolling programme of lighting improvements. They're replacing old energy inefficient lamps with new LED lighting. And of course we do have to be careful with LED that it doesn't actually make the problem worse, because it's quite a lot brighter. It needs to be reduced significantly. But Bristol also say they have a new team with a sort of in-house design that are promoting new designs that are sympathetic to the ecology and climate agenda. So that sounds positive. I think something that was slightly disappointing was that even though Bristol announced a climate emergency and an ecological emergency last year, I couldn't see any mention of light pollution in the climate strategy, and yet it's quite an obvious kind of one to deal with carbon emissions. And light pollution, although it is in the ecological emergency strategy, it's not one of the key targets for improving biodiversity. So, there's still work to be done. So we have got CPRE launched a project locally at the end of last year in November 2019. And Bob was there to help us to launch that, where we were looking to provide stargazing sessions for in the local area, for local groups, for families, for young people, to encourage them to sort of engage with the night sky, to learn more about the harmful effects of light pollution and how they might reduce it, and also just to reconnect with the countryside and with nature, and benefit from the well-being that can offer. Unfortunately, we had to put all the events on hold, of course, due to COVID, but we are looking to sort of repurpose this as an online resource, so look out for that on our website. We're hoping to do sort of interactive materials, guides to local stargazing, and suggestions of where people might go locally that have lower levels of light pollution. We're also looking to work with local councils to help and encourage them to reduce light pollution, and also engaging with communities where they want to work together to reduce light pollution where they live, and just to encourage people to get out and enjoy the countryside in a safe way. So that's really all from me. If you're inspired by our work, please do follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We've got a website, a local website, a national website, and also a special night blight website, which is all there. And I think that's everything. And thanks for listening. Happy stargazing.
Thanks, Sophie. That was great. Bob, are you ready? Can you get your slides on screen?
I certainly am, and I hope here they come.
Oh. We've had some great questions coming through the chat box already. Please keep them coming. Like I said at the beginning, we will save them until we've had both speakers, and then we'll put all the questions to both speakers at the same time. So yeah, looks like Bob is ready. So I'll just reintroduce Bob Mizon, and he is the coordinator of the British Astronomical Association's Commission for Dark Skies, which Sophie mentioned as part of her talk. So Bob, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dorian. Thanks very much for inviting me to speak. Some of this will necessarily duplicate what Sophie said in her excellent little talk, because of course we're both talking about the same subject. But there's no harm in hearing things twice. It might sink in even deeper. So here we go. And let's talk a little bit about light pollution. As Dorian said, I'm the coordinator of the Commission for Dark Skies. It started 31 years ago, and it was a campaign, a commission for dark skies. It was about the loss of the night sky. And a group of astronomers in the British Astronomical Association decided that it was really time to do something about it, since in 1989, when it started, the night sky had been quite obviously disappearing for 30 years before that. I can remember as a small child in the East End of London, not long after World War II, all the streetlights went out at about 10 p.m. to save energy, because World War II had destroyed the economy of this country. And we saw lots of lovely stars over London. And it's very sad that no child in London or any other big city in this country ever sees stars in the night sky. They might see the moon and bright planets, but light pollution has really taken a hold. And unless something's done about it soon, it will, I think, have a sort of runaway effect. I live in Dorset, a largely rural and beautifully starlit county. I hope you've been there. If you can get away from the waste light of Bournemouth and Poole, which have grown together to become, believe it or not, the biggest city on the south coast. It's bigger than Southampton, Brighton, Portsmouth. If you can get away from there, you can see some beautiful night skies. Here's Comet Neowise. Did you see it? If not, either you want to get out more or light pollution stole it from you. This is Comet Neowise, plainly visible to the naked eye a few months ago. And it's over the Cranbourne Chase area of outstanding natural beauty, Britain's latest dark sky reserve under the aegis of the International Dark Sky Association, who manage this dark sky places scheme throughout the world. It's a very large AONB, more than 900 square kilometres, and just up the road from where I live in Wimborne. While we're indoors, of course, going about our evening business, and people tend to be indoors rather a lot more now, than they have been in the past. There's an awful lot going on outside, of course. Beneath the starry stream you see there of the Milky Way, our home galaxy of about half a trillion stars, that's a big number, which can be seen from the AONB as a river of light arching across the sky in the autumn and winter. There are countless creatures, billions of creatures, going about their nightly business. In 2009, Verlin Klinkerburg, an environmental journalist, wrote in the National Geographic, "We've lit up the night as if it were an unoccupied country, when nothing could be further from the truth." So let's talk about that biodiversity that we all hold dear and the health of it, on which our very lives eventually depend. And what is artificial light doing to it? The Commission for Dark Skies is no longer a campaign to save the stars. It's a campaign to save just about everything on this planet. This is Orion from the wilds of mid-Dorset. You can see the constellation that was used by the CPRE in their star count. If you can see my cursor, these are the 3 stars of Orion's belt. The 2 shoulder stars, that's the famous Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse, a red giant. The 2 feet of Orion down here. And inside that rectangle, which is the star count area, you can probably see in my photo hundreds of stars. From a fairly good dark place, you might see 20, 15. From the middle of a town, you'll see, if you're lucky, the 7 brightest stars of the constellation. Some people can't even see that. The upper photo there was taken in the New Forest. And those are 2 members of the Wessex Astronomical Society, to which I belong. And they've just discovered that the owner of a cottage in the New Forest, near one of their favourite night sky observing sites, has installed a new exterior light. We don't call them security lights because there's no relationship between lighting and crime. Honest. When do most break-ins and burglaries occur? In normal times, during the day. 80% of break-ins occur during the day when there's nobody in. What does that say about the role of light and crime? So it's not just an astronomer's problem, it's everybody's problem. It's nature's problem. Because of course we are not the only ones sharing the wasted light from badly aimed and designed lighting. The main facets of light pollution, Sophie discussed them: glare, sky glow, light intrusion. Light intrusion into people's premises is covered by the Clean Neighbourhoods and Environment Act 2005. Just try to get your council to do something about it if you have annoying and possibly health-threatening light shining into your premises. It's very difficult. Most councils do not really, and I've had reports of this from many, many, many people all over the country, they don't really investigate it and help you to the extent that they might. One of the problems, of course, is that local councils don't have lighting experts on their staff. They have environmental health officers, they have traffic officers, highways officers, but they may not be well versed in the technical side of lighting. So it's not really a good idea for the government to say, look, here's this act, let the council investigate your lighting problem. And of course, light intrusion causes a lot of distress and health issues to people. It's not very often addressed by councils, but the sky, of course, is the only part of our environment with no protection in law. Through your windows, possibly you might be able to get something done about it. In the sky, tough. The sky is not protected by law. I said it was everybody's problem. Well, of course, it's nature's problem too. Birds driven from their migratory paths, singing to the sort of false dawn of misdirected nighting at light in urban areas when they should be resting. A bird with insomnia is just as ineffective as a person with insomnia. Moths, owls, bats, foraging is either disrupted or completely obliterated by bright light shining from premises and escaping from towns, because of course light travels in straight lines. It just carries on and on and on forever until something stops it. Fish don't rise to feed if their ponds and streams are lit at night. We probably know the story of turtle hatchlings drawn inland by artificial lighting to die beneath the wheels of passing vehicles when they should be scrambling towards the slight phosphorescence of the sea. The picture at the bottom shows some of the light from Canford Heath, Western Europe's largest housing estate in Poole, Dorset. And you can see there's much more escaping there than there is actually lighting up the town, I think. So the enormous worldwide habitat of night is under attack. The new photo shows a picture of a stag beetle I found in my garden recently, but it's not actually a picture of a stag beetle, it's a picture of my hand. We mustn't forget that the human species too suffers the same fate as these creatures. Light at night is not good for you. Just search on the internet, light pollution and human health. You'll find thousands of learned papers about the effects of light on the human being, on health. One of our Commission for Dark Skies advisors is Dr. Stephen Lockley, a Yorkshireman who works at Harvard University Hospital in the United States. He's probably the world's premier expert on sleep disorders. And he says, as does the American Medical Association, the world's biggest medical organization, that light pollution is a health hazard and that governments must do something about it, and very soon. So it's a worldwide habitat that night. When people say habitat, they think of forests and lakes and grasslands and things like this. But the night is a habitat. The night is the world's biggest habitat because most of the world's species are nocturnal. And you can see from the satellite photos that it's being very, very badly eroded over most of the world, especially around where people live. There's no need for the light on this photo. Why is it coming upwards towards the satellite? And a lot of it is wasted light reflected from the ground by over bright lights. And you might have noticed that in the last few years, lighting, exterior lighting, both public and private, has got much brighter. And we'll be talking about LEDs very soon. This grassy bank in Buckinghamshire may look unoccupied. The night is an unoccupied country. No, it isn't. Of course, in this photo are billions of living creatures of all sizes. But what does he belong to? The Society for Popular Astronomy member who sent me this photo says that the faint light on that grassy bank is actually wasted light from an industrial estate just off the picture. That bank used to be home to dozens of glowworms, and he used to really enjoy seeing them in the darkness of the night. The industrial estate was then lit. Of course, because there's no regulation of lighting in this country, a lot of the light is thrown out of the industrial estate and the surrounding countryside, and there is not a single glowworm there now, ever. They've all been either driven away or driven to extinction by the light, because of course there's no point glowing if it's not dark. Can the assault on the habitat of the night be reversed? Are the new LED lights the solution? Aren't they wonderful, new LED lights? So efficient, so energy efficient, so cheap to run, so easily available, and so bright if you really want to buy one that's dazzling and sends out so much light that it just bounces off every surface and goes all over the place. It's not rocket science to put light where it's needed. As far as I remember from my physics lessons at school many years ago, light travels in straight lines. It goes exactly where you put it. Now, here's the Michelin Man. You may recognize the Michelin Man from my local tyre depot. And as you can see, he's noticed that the depot has a so-called security light mounted the wrong way. That light should be horizontal to the ground to cover the area to be lit, which is, of course, the front and forecourt of the tyre depot. But like nearly all lights on domestic and commercial premises in this country, it's been badly mounted. There's no instructions on the box. There isn't a little line on the light to say mount this way, etc. And so it sends light into the road. It dazzles pedestrians and drivers on the road going past the depot. It steals the stars from the sky because a lot of the light from that fitting is going upwards. And so you just imagine that Michelin Man is saying, have you seen this light? What are they thinking of? Why isn't it pointing where it's needed? What a waste. But we all need artificial light, of course. The Commission for Dark Skies does not want to turn off everybody's lights. We don't want to plunge everybody into medieval darkness. It's crazy. Artificial light is one of the most amazing inventions in human history. It's been with us for nearly 150 years now. But it's simply a question of the right amount of light, when it's needed, where it's needed, and of the right quality to help us rather than damage us. And Sophie said enough about the damage to human health of overbright and blue-rich lighting. And whatever happens to live in the vicinity of that light outside certainly doesn't need illuminating, because it's been evolving for the last several million years to have a night and a day, a circadian cycle. It's a sad fact, isn't it, that the lack of regulation on lighting in this country means that most outdoor lights, domestic, commercial, they're just not designed for the task. They're too bright, they're poorly angled. And with LEDs mimicking daylight, they are completely the wrong spectrum for seeing at night. The old sodium lights used to be much better. A nice gentle orange light, which didn't really dazzle you and make you feel uncomfortable. I drive with the sun visor down at night because some of the LED lights on roads now are just much too bright for the job. It's difficult to find lights on the market in retailers' sheds, as they're called nowadays, that don't have these negative qualities. Go to B&Q, go to Wix and all these other places, try to find a light that only shines downwards. You won't be able to. They're not made in this country. They're nearly all made in other countries where standards are very few and far between. Road lighting is a typical road light. And partly due to the efforts of the CPRE and the Dark Skies people and lots of other environmental organisations, their aim downwards. The Highways Agency decided more than 10 years ago to point all their new lights downwards. Good. Or is it? Because it depends what's up there inside that casing, doesn't it? If it's an LED that's 10 times brighter than it should be, and the people who invented that particular really bright blue rich light got the Nobel Prize, can you believe? Yeah. If it's far too bright for the job, most of the light will light the road, fine, and then it'll bounce off the road because there's too much of it and go straight into the sky and bounce off surfaces and go off into the countryside, and we all know what that means. Many councils are switching off lights. As Sophie said, it saves us an awful lot of money. Dimming is often not noticed by people. According to best research, dimming and switching off completely lights between, say, midnight and 5 does not increase crime rates. Just research it. It doesn't increase crime rates. Crime rates in the Bristol area and Gloucester north of it have gone down during the part night lighting periods. In Dorset, where I live, all lights have been going off on roads at 12 o'clock for at least 3 or 4 years now. It saved the council nearly £500,000 a year, and the crime rate in most places has gone down by an average 30%. Sounds unlikely? Just research it. studies have shown that burglars don't care about lighting, whether it's there or not. They want to get in. The only thing they care about, is there anybody in? Or is there a massive great dog there? Most other factors are completely irrelevant to burglars. In fact, most burglars go in during the daytime when there's nobody in. Lighting and crime, not related. Hang on, I've got something appearing on my screen I want to get rid of. Yeah. Most importantly, thing is to get it right before regulation, when it comes, and I'm sure it will come one day, before regulation means expensive replacements and alterations to unsuitable lighting. You see a light here in a Dorset village that shines straight into somebody's bedroom. Why? Why didn't the installers think of installing a shield? Nobody knows. So let's get it right before it's put in. Avoid over brightness, avoid light intrusion, avoid biodiversity collapse. And Sophie mentioned the maps. I'm going to toggle between two of the maps that were produced. This one in 1993, as you can see, satellite image of the UK. Red, of course, London, Bristol, Edinburgh, Birmingham, Liverpool. They are the red bits, they are the bright bits. Blue is not too bad, countryside, sort of medium light pollution. Black, of course, is really dark, very nice for the stars and also for anything that happens to be living there. Here's the 2000 map. Now you can see what's happening. If I toggle between them, what happened to light pollution in this country between 1993 and 2000? You can see it got worse. It spread further, and that's been continuing. In spite of all the good work done by the CPRE, in spite of all the good work done by astronomical bodies, by many other environmental concerns, it's not getting any better, the light pollution problem. Ian Phillips Ian Phillips was the chairman of the Landscape Institute. And he put it very succinctly when he said that too much lighting isn't planned, it just happens. Look at the lights around where you live. They've just happened. Nobody's really thought too much about where they point. They've bought them in places where you can't get a non-glary light. And here we have a farm, top picture, in the wilds of northern Scotland. At least it might be a farm, I can't see a thing. And there we have a picture that Sophie showed. That's actually a car park in rural Kent. It might be, not quite sure, much too bright. And of course, if somebody wants to go and steal things out of the cars in that car park, the light is their best friend, isn't it? You can't see it. Everybody in the UK, no matter how old, has grown up surrounded by poor quality lights. My mother-in-law is 100 years old. Throughout her lifetime, she's been surrounded by ever glarier and worse quality lights. Why? It's because the UK planning regime does not capture much of exterior lighting. It considers only how lights might affect the appearance of buildings by day and not their nighttime effect on the locality. Top left, a racecourse in rural Essex. The horses are not up in the clouds, but nobody seems to care that the floodlights shine upwards as well as downwards. Top right, that's a building in the New Forest, a national park. In a national park, the guidelines say no upward light. But who thinks about that when they're putting the light there? About, 40% of that light is going upwards from the LED source in the center of the light. It's shining into the car park of that community hall, and people in the car park are totally dazzled by this light. On a rainy night, small child in dark clothing doesn't stand much chance of surviving being hit by an incoming car, the driver of which can't see anything because of the glary light. Good lighting really matters. Getting it where it's supposed to be really matters. And at the bottom there, and you might be surprised at this, that's Stonehenge. Yeah, Stonehenge. UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a golf driving range. It's called the Stonehenge Golf Driving Range. English Heritage administer Stonehenge. A lot of people have complained about this. We wrote to them and said, look, do you not care to do anything to try to mitigate this light over Western Europe's most astronomically significant ancient monument? And they replied, I paraphrase, it's no business of ours because we don't own the golf driving range. What can you do? People who do this kind of thing, tipping rubbish, fly tipping in the countryside, face no penalty because most of them get away completely scot-free. If in the unlikely event they're caught or identified by carefully placed CCTV, then they might be fined. If they keep doing this and they're caught, they can go to prison for, I think it's 2 years. So there is protection for areas of the countryside, protected landscapes, we hear about them, but there isn't any protection for those who taint the night sky and invade rural spaces with wasted light. Wasted light is probably worse than fly tipping in rural areas. This garbage here probably doesn't kill too many creatures, but wasted light is pervasive. It's happening all the time. It's not suddenly switched off quite often. And so it's worse, I think, than fly tipping when we're talking about environmentally damaging the countryside. The picture shows sky glow from Bournemouth and Poole in the old sodium days, which is why it's orange, of course. It's much worse now as the white, overbright LED lights have replaced it. It's just a different colour. It's a common sight from many countryside areas, this. And it's an interesting fact that most light pollution is caused by light between 0 and 10 degrees above the horizontal. Why is this? It's because that's where most of the particles and droplets, aerosols in the atmosphere are concentrated. So as the light travels out from towns and villages and even farms and places like this, most of the light is scattered in that lower part of the atmosphere. It's much more intense to anybody, any creature who detects it from below. Blue rich light scatters much more than any other colour, so that's another way in which LEDs are aggravating the problem. The light from distant stars and galaxies takes hundreds, thousands, even millions of years to reach our eyes. What a tragedy to lose it in the last millisecond of its journey. I wrote that. Light pollution responses and remedies. It's on Amazon. A few words about the Commission for Dark Skies, founded in 1989. We don't moan at, we work with central, regional, local government, industry, local organisations like the CPRE, national too, lighting professionals. Lighting professionals don't want to destroy the environment. They're responsible people. It's just that a lot of the units they work with aren't really well designed. And people who choose and install lighting, it's a time I think that there was a lot more education on this. Why don't B&Q and Wix and others have proper information about using lights on the stands where they sell them? Promoting star quality lights, the ones that really help the stars and the terrestrial environment too, is a no-brainer really, isn't it? Are we having any effect? Are all these organizations working against light pollution having any effect? Is the tide of light pollution turning? On the left, that's taken from Cologne. You probably know that place. It's in the countryside, not far from Bath, I believe, not far from the M4 motorway. And you can see there the lights from Bristol, Trowbridge, Bath, Chippenham, Melksham. At the top there, there's the light from Lee Delamere Services on the motorway. Oh, and there's a little comet there too. Can you see it? Comet Hale-Bopp, 1997, brightest thing in the sky for 8 weeks. Though many people reported they couldn't see it because of the local lighting. At the moment, I'm participating in the Exmoor Dark Sky Festival. That's a photo taken from the centre of Exmoor. And even in this large dark area, which was England's first international dark sky reserve under the International Dark Sky Association scheme, even there you can see that the horizon is being infiltrated by wasted light from the towns on the coast and even from local farms. Are we having any effect? Is it getting better ever? Well, it was thought that LEDs would solve the problem. They're so versatile. They're incredibly easily directed, not like the old tubular lights that shone all over the place. Lights like this, of course, it depends on the number of LED units you have, the color. Why are they all white? You can get LEDs in all sorts of different colors. They don't have to be white and mimic daylight. The technology has been misapplied. LEDs could have saved the night sky. They could have saved a lot of aggravation to the creatures that live in not just urban areas, but rural areas around those towns. But it's been completely lost, this wonderful opportunity of helping the environment with better lighting. Overbright, blue-rich, daylight mimicking stuff is the norm, and that's bad. It really is. Now, here's a change of scenery. You may not recognize Edvard Munch, but everyone knows the picture that he painted. This is The Scream, of course. Many people assume that the character in the painting, which is Munch himself, painted in one of his more depressive and despairing episodes, many people assume that the person is screaming. This is what Munch said about the painting in 1892. I was walking along the road and the sun went down and I felt a gust of melancholy. Suddenly the sky turned a bloody red. I stopped and leaned against the railing, tired to death as the flaming skies hung like blood over the blue-black fjord. And I felt a vast, infinite scream through nature. It's not the person screaming, it's nature screaming at him. And later, in an interview, Munch said to a newspaper reporter, "This painting is an expression of the irreversible impact of civilization on nature." So it's not just a new thing, this thought. Some of us believe that it's not irreversible. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing to try to counter it. It's not irreversible yet. So people who legislate for the nations of the world and who really ought to be caring about seeing the northern lights from the UK, which is what you're seeing there, people responsible for the good, for the health of all environments and everything that lives in them, should be prioritizing the climate crisis. And every one of us should be supporting the new all-party parliamentary group for dark skies. 22 MPs pushing in Parliament for proper action on light pollution. All the while that Brexit boils on, all the while that the COVID crisis continues, they don't stand a lot of chance. But when finally the dust settles from these two things, then they're going to get stuck in. The co-chairman of this group is the Astronomer Royal, Lord Rees, who sits in the House of Lords. All those MPs are going to try really hard. They need your support. If you don't know anything about them, just search for APPG Dark Skies. You'll be able to look at what they intend to do. You'll be able to see the 10 targets they've set themselves for policy change in the government, because they, like us, know that the fragmentation of the habitat of darkness must be reversed. The role of excessive blue-rich lighting in the biodiversity crash must be acknowledged and acted upon. And the precautionary principle, you know that one, if something might be harmful, don't do it unless you can prove that it isn't. This must be applied in the case of LEDs and the new lighting technology. We know, we can show, learned papers show that it's harmful the way it's been done. Let's stop doing it now and find out how to do it better. So astronomers and environmentalists, all these people concerned with looking after the environment, they know that biodiversity needs us to help it thrive. And there's a good example to follow. France has a national light pollution law. In 2018, the French government passed the law to protect the environment, both up there and down here, from wasted light and the theft of the habitat of the night. You can see the French know that regulation works better than guidelines. Guidelines, you can ignore them, you can throw them in the bin. Regulation, you got to do it. The French law says no upward light, curfews on industrial and commercial lighting, no blue-rich light, maximum 3000 Kelvin. Some of the lights being put in now in modern housing estates, for example, are 5000 Kelvin, which is really blue-rich. 3000 is pretty good, sort of down towards the redder end of the spectrum. There are extra measures in the French law for national parks, their equivalent of AONBs, nature reserves. They don't allow sky beams, commercial advertising use of the night sky. It can be done. It's being done not just in France. Liechtenstein, now there's not a very big country. They have a law to protect the night sky. Slovenia, parts of Italy. We can do it. There's those northern lights from Portsmouth, can you believe? And thank you very much for listening to me, ranting on about light pollution and biodiversity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Bob. I hope you don't mind me saying, but at times during that, when you were talking about glowworms and the importance of darkness and everything, I just wanted you to read me bedtime stories or something. You've got a fantastic voice, and you speak very well about the night sky. So thank you for that, and thank you to our other speaker, Sophie. I'm sorry to some of the people who've joined us a little bit late. We are going to sort of have some questions, and then we're going to wrap up hopefully before 9 o'clock. If you did join late and you want to catch up on what happened before you joined, the video of tonight is going to be going on YouTube. Most likely tomorrow, and I'll send it out in an email to everyone who booked a ticket through Eventbrite.
Do I have time, Dorian, to show a 3-minute video about biodiversity?
A 3-minute video? Yeah, go on then. Can you share your screen?
Yes, let me just get rid of this one first. Okay. Yeah. I'm just sharing that again, and here's the video. I hope it starts automatically.
Try the play button in the middle bottom. There you go.
Biodiversity, the variety of life on planet Earth. In 1980, a study of just 19 trees in the forests of Panama revealed that they were home to 1,200 different beetle species. And that's only the beetles. The trees, the immediate habitat. Micro-worlds of textures, pathways, hideaways, intersections, foods, battles, pairings, life and death. The forests, the larger habitat. Stars in patches, moonlight filtering. Light enough to live the night. And darkness, huge habitat of half the world. Ambush the unsuspecting. Forage unseen. Avoid the predator if you can. Most of the world's land species are nocturnal. All nature knew that night once, as shield, as secret place, as active space or resting space, faint lit by far, far star clouds and creeping planets, and the moon for half the month. Constellations of biolights, of fireflies and glowworms mirrored the stars above. The night, habitat of the teeming trillions that crisscross it, live it, and thrive dusk to dawn. That huge habitat, the cloak of night, now frayed and torn, eroded, riven and ravaged by stray light, wasted by sports and roads, and the back garden security lamp aimed randomly outwards and skywards. Light cast by the species that escaped the forests and grew a brain big enough to invent a world, but not subtle enough to protect one. Repair the night, learn the night, have light, careful light when needed, where needed, only. If only. Heal Earth's scars, protect the night, light with care.
Again, beautiful. I could fall asleep to it, but a very important message that we should all be paying attention to. I'll just share this back up again for anyone who missed it at the beginning. These are our upcoming talks. Those are our websites for both Clifton Climate Action and the Bishopston Cottam and Redland Energy Group. If you've enjoyed tonight's talk, please consider sticking a few quid in our PayPal account. You can see the link at the bottom. £2, £3, £4, £5 from everyone here would make a huge, huge difference to our groups, and the money will be split evenly between the two groups. I should have made that clearer earlier as well. Okay, thank you very much to everyone who's been putting questions in the chat box. Just before we come to those, who was it? Harry. Did you, so Harry has sent me a message through the chat to say that he was part, Harry, do you want to explain it? You were part of a project about lighting footpaths in Ashley Vale.
So can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So it's just in the principle of think globally, act locally. I wanted to give a local example where we were able to stop the light coming in. Bristol City Council about 10 years ago wanted to improve the footpaths in the area through allotments and so on for access to schools by improving the surface, which was good, and putting in street lighting along every footpath locally, which was bad. They said it would cut crime and make it safer. We said it was expensive. It wasn't necessary. Very, very few children had to walk those routes in darkness, you know, because it was, even in the depths of winter, it's not dark till later. The intrusive nature of the lighting on neighboring houses, the fact that, as Bob sort of intimated, it would encourage antisocial behavior. Light is shown as a play, as a thing that where people can gather, and it actually encourages low-level crime as well as other sorts. And some of the footpaths run alongside a nature reserve, local nature reserve, Narroways, which has got bats and moths and wildlife, and the impact upon that, which we didn't quite know, but we thought it would be detrimental. So our low point was reached when the Bristol Evening Post, I just happened to notice a copy in the supermarket one Saturday, and it was the front page, and it said "Dark Ages," and it was a picture of two little children looking trepidatious before going up into a dark footpath. And the article went on to say these nutters care more about moths than our children, and we were just sort of devastated. But you know, we had a series of meetings with the council, the councillors. John Rogers was very active, and the council officers, and we had a petition, and eventually policy changed before they put the lights in, and they decided it wasn't cost effective, and it actually was no longer policy to light footpaths. And the one compromise which we were very happy to reach was the cycleway in the area. They installed solar powered cat's eyes, which were like really low level lighting, but and enabled cyclists to see where they were going. And the street lights were never put in, and this part of Bristol remains, you know, slightly darker than some other parts. Yes, Bob?
Go ahead, Bob.
If I can just say something about that, I cannot count the number of times that people have contacted me and other members of our campaign and said, I've asked people to stop shining lights through my windows. I've asked councils and sports grounds to stop shining lights through my windows. I myself asked Dover Harbour Board why they lit up the cliffs of Dover instead of the dockyard, and they all said the same thing. These lights are needed for safety. All right, point them where they're needed then. They don't see the argument. They think you're trying to switch their lights off. People always think you're trying to switch their lights off if you say you don't like it shining through your window. What about those luminous cat's eyes? There's a solution. There's always a solution to bad lighting. The answer is good lighting. It's not turning everything off. But of course, there's not much point, I don't think, in having a footpath lit at 1 o'clock in the morning. If you really need to go down that footpath and it isn't small children at 1 o'clock in the morning, take a torch. It's what people have been doing for the best part of a century. And what you say to them quite simply is, where are you more likely to be a victim of crime? Is it in the brightly lit city centre of Bristol, or is it in some unlit village in the middle of Gloucestershire? I think I know the answer. Lighting does not defeat crime. Often causes it.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for bringing that up, Harry. I think I know the area you're talking about, and I think I know the cat's eyes, and they're pretty good. So yeah, the first question that I want to bring up from the chat was about, I think it was Sophie, first of all, brought up sort of streetlight dimming and whether you can do that on a sort of like a sensor. So if there's people around, it gets a little bit brighter, and otherwise it's just at a sort of medium level. Was that something you were talking about, and how effective is that?
I think that's definitely an option. I mean, there's lots, as Bob said, there's lots of solutions to bad lighting, and I think that sort of sensor option is one. And there's a great example near Bath of a hospice, and I can't remember the name of it, but they just won an award with the local Starlit Skies group, because they had a car park and they needed to light it at night because people needed to be able to get to the hospice safely at night to visit people. And so they needed to extend the car park, and they wanted to put in more lighting, and the neighbours objected because they said, well, actually this is really detrimental. It's in quite a rural area, and the hospice hadn't actually realised that this would be a problem to the neighbours. So often it's just a lack of awareness.
Yes.
And so they got some lighting engineers, and they actually managed to design a scheme that did involve those kind of sensor lighting. So they were basically low level, so they were on sort of knee-high kind of wooden stakes, and they just, in part of the car park, they just came on as people walked or drove by. and they found it absolutely brilliant, and the neighbours were really happy because light wasn't shining in all the time. It was a really good design because it just came on when people needed it. So absolutely, that, you know, there's lots of different solutions, and it's just about being aware and kind of being inventive about how we solve these problems, and just thinking about it in terms.
Yeah, they say that less is more. It's absolutely true with lighting.
Yeah.
There's always a solution. You don't have to blind everything in the vicinity. Well, a little point about LEDs, unlike the old orange lights, you might have noticed, they don't sort of take ages to come on. The orange lights used to glow feebly for 5 minutes and then come on. LEDs can react immediately. In Belgium, there's lots of trials where the street lights in towns only come on if there's anything moving in the vicinity. So if there's a pedestrian or a car, the light above them will come on. And as they go down the street, the lights go like a Mexican wave all along. It saves enormous amounts of energy.
That sounds great. And actually related to that, I forget, I think it was Sophie brought up a figure that 30% of councils' carbon emissions is due to street lighting. Was that, who was it who brought up that?
So that was me. That was an estimate. So and I don't know what the figure is for Bristol, and I don't think they probably don't know either. No. But that was from our shedding light report, and if anyone is interested, that's got a huge amount of kind of information. Oh, it's probably back to front, but that's it, and it can be downloaded. Oh, is it? Okay. It can be downloaded for free on our website. It's a little bit older now, but it's got loads of information about different approaches in this country in local councils, and that's where that figure came from. So yeah, that is a kind of estimate given how much money councils tend to spend on street lighting at that time. So have a look there for more information. But I really like some of, you know, what that doesn't cover is international examples, and I really like some of Bob's examples of what's happening in other countries as well, because I think we need to learn from other countries about how they're dealing with this better.
Definitely.
Well, I'm going to wave my book at you now. Okay. Blinded by the Light, the splendid A4 handbook. You can purchase this or download it free from the Commission for Dark Skies website. Just search Commission for Dark Skies and it's under downloads.
Fantastic.
40 pages of fantastic stuff.
Great.
Brilliant.
Great. Is there an audio book? Sorry, I'm being weird now. I'm being weird. But yeah, Julie's other question, which is something that we're always talking about a lot at these things, is sort of what we as people, I assume most of the people in this talk live in Bristol. A lot of us will live in either Clifton or the Bishopston, Cottam and Redland area. What can we do personally to reduce light pollution? Is it as simple as turning off our lights and making sure they don't angle up into the sky when they don't need to?
Shall I go first? I mean, I think that is definitely a start. So just being aware is a start, and we produce some little postcards that are just about being aware of lights and starry skies. So starting off with your own lights, whatever they might be. But I think, you know, I think Harry's example was just exactly what people can do. It's sort of thinking about what is in your local area that may be having a big impact on light pollution. So can you join together as a community group? Because that is always more, so you're already a group, you know, you'll always have a better voice if you're part of a kind of a grouping. And it's just about approaching whoever is causing the light. So is it the local authority? Is it a business? Is it the, you know, in Bath, the people are very concerned about the university. So they've kind of joined together as a group and to approach them. And particularly now with the climate emergency agenda, I think we're in a good position to be able to argue for these improvements because they do have a big impact, and we have an obligation to meet certain targets. And so, you know, councils are going to be very keen to do that. And, you know, I was disappointed when I looked at the climate emergency strategy to see that lighting isn't included, but, you know, that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be at some point. And I think it's about just putting pressure on our local councils, on businesses, whoever it is, who's the sort of the culprits really, and just making them aware that we're aware and that we care about it and we want to do something.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, pressuring the council is definitely going to be a big part of it. I've just seen that we're coming up on 9 o'clock, so I probably want to only do one or maybe two quick questions. I think this is a good one. So Julie again just says that she's never seen the starry sky. I don't know where you grew up, Julie, but that's incredibly sad. I'd love it if we could have a lights off 10 minutes in Bristol one clear night. Is that sort of thing? Is that a sort of thing that happens?
Oh, local councils are terrified that if they do something and it causes, they think, an accident, they'll be sued.
Right.
They're very loath to turn off the lights that they have put there until after midnight when there's almost nobody about anyway.
Right.
So that's one of the problems. In Belgium, they've been trialing switching off lights in small towns and villages for years now. And they've proved quite distinctly that it doesn't really cause ill effects. Accidents rates don't really change at all. And people are really amazed at seeing the night sky because 90% of people in the developed world have never seen it.
I think personally, I think it's unlikely to happen in Bristol. But one of the things that we want to do as a campaign group is to help people in Bristol who haven't seen a dark sky or want to see one. So just keep an eye on our website. We'll be putting hopefully some resources that will help you find places that are darker skies that you can get to, hopefully. So we really want to address that problem. But yeah, I can't imagine Bristol City Council agreeing to, but it's a great idea.
Sounds a bit bold.
One thing that the Wessex Astro Society has done is to invite people, and we got about 100 turning up to a rural place, and we took with us a big portable floodlight and some batteries. And then we suddenly switched the floodlight off halfway through the introduction, and everybody just gasped at the night sky. You can just simulate a bad lighting situation and show what happens when it's not bad anymore.
I think a lot of people felt during lockdown that the quality of the view of the stars had improved, and I think that was partly to do with the less air pollution as well,
and also aircraft contrails. Aircraft contrails contribute hugely to not being.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I think this is going to be our last question. It's a really interesting one that we haven't talked about yet. So this is from someone called Nicola, who says that she's from a group called Adblock Bristol. Do you have any comments on the impact of the increasing number of digital advertising screens on wildlife and people in Bristol? We've had reports from Eastern residents near the huge advertising screens by the M32 that they affect the behaviour of garden birds, as well as being very intrusive, shining through people's windows, and are also completely unnecessary and huge amount of energy. I think Nicola's made her feelings on them quite clear, but did you want to add anything to that?
There's a real traffic hazard, certainly. They blind oncoming drivers. And as someone who's lost a dear family member through a road accident, you know, such things can tear a family apart. You shouldn't really blind oncoming drivers. The easy way to do this, of course, is simply to change the lighting within the adverts so that they don't have this dazzling effect. It's a simple solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a CPRE, we've also done quite a lot of work on adverts and the sort of proliferation of large adverts in our sort of public spaces, and you know that isn't necessarily a really appropriate way to use public space. But I think the lighting angle is just another example of where local authorities are not thinking really about the impact that that's having. And the other issue that I think the all-party parliamentary group is possibly considering is this new phenomena of shining adverts into the sky using, you must have heard of this, Bob, where you're using lights to advertise something actually on the sky.
Yeah, like the bat symbol.
Yeah, things like that, but actually, yeah, for commercial gain. So, I mean, we've complained heavily about this, and you know, it's one of those things that just is about public opinion, and it's just assumed that people don't really care or they don't mind about these things. So the more vocal that we can be as organizations, you know, as individuals, then we can get an environment that is better for all of us, and that isn't so focused on commercial opportunities, which it is unfortunately at the moment quite heavily.
I'm seeing a chat about the Twin Towers commemoration floodlights. I believe they've been discontinued because of the effect on birds, which used to congregate in their thousands inside the beams and fly around all night till they drop with exhaustion. So, you know, there's a consequence to such things. The Civil Aviation Authority is very worried about people shining beams into the sky for obvious reasons.
But there are ways, as I think you said, Bob, that you can do the lighting well. And I think one of the examples you gave is Clifton Suspension Bridge. Isn't that quite a good example?
Some people think, oh, the Clifton Bridge, that's a bit heavily lit. But if you look at the lights on the Clifton Bridge, just go and have a look at them closely. They're encased in little cylinders with shields on those cylinders so that the light only hits the ironwork. It doesn't go into the eyes of drivers. It doesn't shine into the sky. So if you have to light a structure, do it like that.
There we
so
go.
We can enjoy kind of these things and not actually light up the night sky.
But as for shining lights into the sky, how many other ways are there to advertise things? Proven ways. So why the hell invent another one that's environmentally a bit dodgy? Precautionary principle. Yeah, it might be a bit dodgy. Don't do it until you can prove that it's not.
Yeah, we really are getting ever closer to that episode of Futurama set in the year 3000, where they've learned how to put adverts in our dreams, and something like that. Okay, it's very nearly 9 o'clock. This has been a really interesting talk. Thank you so much to both of our speakers, to everyone in the chat and everyone hopefully watching this on YouTube later. Please do check out CPRE Avonside, or CPRE Bristol and Avon, as it's now called. Do check out the campaign for Dark Skies. Our websites are on the screen in front of you. Our PayPal link is there. Check out Bob's book. Look at Sophie's report. Give us cash. And we'll be back on Zoom on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month for as long as we can afford to, basically, and as long as we can keep. And as Nicola always has to remind me, please follow us on Instagram as well, at Clifton Climate Act, because that's the one I don't do, so it's the one I always forget to plug.
Thank you, Dorian, for a great meeting. Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's really kind of you. Thanks you
for having me.
But yes, I'm going to stop the recording now, and yes, thank you all very much for coming.
Here we are, everyone.